For me, some of the most attractive pieces of technology ever made are shortwave radio receivers from the late 70s and early 80s. I'm particularly drawn to the Sony range. Look at this one, I mean, with all the dials and digital readouts and things. How about this, a Sony CRF 330K with a pop-out cassette recorder in the bottom? I'd get one of those if I could afford it, but just look at this price. I mean, this is top end, but this is the kind of price that people expect to sell them for nowadays. They've held on to their value. They weren't cheap when they were new. This one back in 1978 would have cost you $2,500 approximately. So nowadays you might be better off just getting a picture of it for £5.49 plus postage. But of course there are plenty of cheaper alternatives to choose from, although they are far less attractive to me, like this Philips 990. You can see this one sold for £221 plus £22 postage. Although if you bought it for parts or repair, someone sold one for £132 plus postage. However, I saw this one being advertised for £40, so I put one bid in for it and I was the chap who won it. It said it was for repairs, not working, the radio does not come on, but it was in very good condition. And indeed it is. I mean, it's far from perfect, but I've seen a lot worse. A lot of the shortwave radios advertised on eBay seem to have had a very hard life. They've got broken off buttons, cracked cases. This one doesn't look too bad in comparison. It even comes with its loop antenna, which I believe is missing quite often for this particular model. This was Philips' first shortwave radio with a digital tuner readout, and it dates from 1982. Now, as you know, or hopefully know, I'm no repair expert, but I like to buy broken things every now and then just to see if I can get them working, if it's something simple that's broken, something that I could fix. Looking at the back of this, I can kind of guess what's happened. The voltage selector is on 110 to 127 volts. However, in the picture on the auction, the chap had been plugging this into a UK power supply. Well, those two things don't mix very well. We've got 240 or 230 volts coming out of the wall here. So it seems like something's probably blown in here. Hopefully just a fuse that needs replacing. I mean, I've done it myself accidentally with things, so I can understand how that could happen. Let's have a look in the battery compartment. Well, I can see why these wouldn't work. There's obviously some battery that's leaked in there, corroded the terminals a bit, so those wouldn't get any contact if you were to put batteries in there. So let's just swap the multi-voltage device around, which is just a little blanking plate that covers up these 3 pins inside. It's supposed to go on the 2 on the left. So you put it on those 2 and now it should be running on the UK power supply. Let's see what happens when we plug a lead into it. And the answer is absolutely nothing, which isn't really a surprise. If a fuse is blown, then it's not going to work at all. Let's try and plug something into this 12-volt DC power supply. I was hoping this was on a different circuit to the main power supply, and maybe the chap selling this had never tried plugging anything into it. But no, nothing with that one either. Although it's more than likely if a fuse has blown due to the wrong voltage being plugged into this, then the whole thing will be off until that fuse is replaced. So hopefully there's a fuse in here that I can just swap out and that will solve the problem and we'll have a working radio. So looking in the back here for fuses, I managed to find one on the right hand side here. Unfortunately though, looking at it, it looks like there's nothing wrong with that fuse. So I tested it for continuity with my multimeter and sure enough, it's perfectly fine. So I can put that one back in. I suppose I could have tested it in its location without taking it out, but I do like to take fuses out just so I can have a good look at them. Took this one out as well, tested the continuity on that, no problem there. Had a look around the rest of the machine, couldn't find any more fuses. Downloaded the service manual, which is available online, but only in Dutch. And I think that's all the fuses that are in the device. So I think what's happened here is when the excess voltage has been applied to it, it's just killed this transformer. It's silly that they didn't have fuses that could blow before that happened, but still, it looks like that transformer is dead. So it seems like the next step is to source a suitable replacement transformer. But then again, when I think about it, I was never really planning on running this thing from the mains power. I was going to run it off batteries and I haven't tested that yet. So I think I should try and clean off those battery contacts, put some D cells in and see what happens.
All I heard was somebody calling for an ambulance, right? So I'm like...
Well, that was a bit of a turn up for the books. Now, I'm never going to get a good reception in this room anyway with all the electronics in here, but it doesn't help that the aerial is snapped off, so I'll have to replace that. I've noticed, though, that all the LED indicators for the different frequency ranges are lighting up as they should do, when I twist the dial around. So there seems to be quite a lot of this that is working as it should do. I'll definitely have to take this out into the garden though if I'm going to stand a chance of picking up any shortwave radio. However, I do notice that the tuning strength indicator is working as it should do, as is the light for the display. However, the digital readout itself is not doing anything. But then again, I haven't put any batteries in the second battery holder on the back. I assume this was just to store the time. Now, it is broken, but I think I can hold those two halves together with a bit of duct tape just temporarily while I put a couple of batteries in there. Hopefully the clock will appear, and at least that means that the display itself is working. So with those in there, let's spin it around and have a look. And it's a success. The clock is on, and turning the radio on also brings the frequency display on there. So the LCD doesn't use power from the main 6D cells, it just draws it from those two AA's. So now I might as well set the time to the correct time, and that's just a matter of popping out this little control panel, and you can choose to set the actual time or a dual time, so it can display two different time zones on here. And if you prefer 12 or 24-hour clock mode, there's a sneaky little switch hidden in the battery compartment at the back. You can also set alarms on this, so you can use this as a giant alarm clock radio. Now, it's not something I was planning on doing, but I thought I'd give it a go anyway. So you can set the alarm time, and then there's a switch in the middle that you move up or down depending upon whether you want it to play the radio when the alarm goes off or a buzzer sound. However, after trying this a few times, it just didn't seem to work. So I had a look in that manual that I've got, and it does show that when you set the alarm into the radio, you should get a little note indicator at the top of the screen, and when you set it to buzzer, you get a little bell icon. Well, neither of those are appearing on mine, so it seems like perhaps that switch just isn't working. Now, whilst I've got no intention of using the alarm function, I thought, well, I've got the back of this, I might as well take the front off it as well, see if there's anything obvious that I can repair in there. And also I wanted to get behind that front panel, because you'll see on this left switch here, the screws are visible. Well, they shouldn't be. There's a little plate that's supposed to go around each switch that hides those, and it's clearly missing off that one. So I might as well replace that anyway, at least, even if I can't do anything about the alarm. So it's just a matter of taking 4 screws out of the back that are holding the front panel on, and then removing all the dials off the front panel as well, so that the panel can come away from the rest of the body. Although I noticed that once I pulled it forward, there were a load of wires still connecting the two things together. So I didn't try and remove the panel completely, but it was open enough to let me get to this switch surround. You can see here it's a broken piece of plastic. So I'll need to make a template for that. To do that, I'm going to remove one of the other switches, take the surround off that, and then I can get a piece of black card and cut it to the same dimensions, and then it's just a matter of punching a hole in the middle of it, and that's a pretty close approximation to the original. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with this alarm switch other than the fact it doesn't do anything. By that I mean spraying contact cleaner on it made no difference. If you have the radio on, turn the volume up, you can hear it click when it moves into either position, which sounds like it's connecting to something. I think the problem lies elsewhere. It's some kind of logic board issue, something above my pay grade that I wouldn't be able to repair, even if I wanted to, but I don't want to, because I would never want to use the alarm on this radio. It's just out of curiosity. I wanted to see what it sounded like. So on to some other much simpler things that I can do something about, like this pop-up handle, which seems a little bit reluctant to pop up because it's gripping against the side, so a little bit of spray lubricant sorted that out. Now, as far as the aerial goes, well, fortunately, it's one of these ones that's got a hinge on it, which means it's got a screw going through there, which means I could take the screw out and then just replace the top bit. So that's what I did. I ordered a new aerial to fit on the top of there, but it was next day delivery. So whilst that was happening, I decided to clean the radio thoroughly and put all the dials and knobs back on the front again. Now, the tuning dial on this radio has 2 modes. Depending upon whether it's being pushed in or pulled out, it will do a standard tune or a fine tune. So it moves the needle at different speeds, especially important for getting those shortwave frequencies tuned in accurately. Right, my aerial has now arrived, and one thing I didn't realise with these is that there's a small copper washer that goes either side of the central part, so that when you put your screw through it and tighten it up, it holds it in position. I didn't put those in there on this occasion, so it just left the aerial all floppy. I thought I must have bought the wrong size, and then I saw the little copper washers down inside, so I put those either side, and it's holding itself in position properly now. There's just a couple more jobs to do before I put the back on here. The first one is to make sure I've properly cleaned out that battery compartment. I've got rid of any acid residue or corrosion out of there. The second one is to replace the battery holder for the digital display. So it's just a matter of snipping the wires to that one and soldering the new one in its place. The new one is a little bit larger though, so it doesn't fit quite as well. I might replace it with a AAA adapter at some point in the future. Now, when I originally took the back off this, these two wires came off connectors on the back, which are for external aerials. They're very short wires, and it would be pretty much impossible to solder them back on, given the length of them. So I've just extended them a little bit, which enables me to solder them onto the connectors on the inside. Just those few centimetres of extra wire makes a very difficult reassembly job into a very easy one. Now, there's just one more job to do with this, and that's to put this sticker on the back. If I happen to pick this radio up in 10 years and wonder why it doesn't work when I plug it in, this tells me why. Although it's probably more likely if someone's clearing my house out and they wonder why it isn't working, that should help them as well. But while I'm still kicking around, I'm going to treat this one to some new batteries. I've got to say, though, that I was never going to use this one plugged into the mains because I wouldn't get any shortwave radio reception in my house. There's just too much electrical interference. This is the kind of thing I need to take away from the house to listen to. As far as listening to radio in the house, I've got plenty of other alternatives that do plug into the wall. And just as I was finishing up, I noticed this was making a bit of a mess on the counter. That's because the rubber feet that were once on there had fallen off. So I replaced those with some new ones, and that means it won't scratch any surfaces it's placed down on. So overall, I think this has come out pretty well. Those buttons that I replaced the surrounds on look all right. I say buttons because I ended up replacing two of them. Another one was cracked, and I'd challenge you to spot which two I've replaced. I mean, we know the one on the left, but you can't really tell. Well, maybe you can, it's in 4K, but it looks all right from a distance anyway. Oh, and if you're wondering how all the switches on the front of here survived intact after all these years, well, it's down to these bars on either side. They're not just there to look rugged and cool, they're there to protect the front. If it falls over, the switches are prevented from hitting any surface, as long as, of course, the surface is flat. But it's worked for all these years. I'm pretty sure without those being on here, a couple of those switches would be bound to be snapped off by now. Now, whilst we couldn't get the alarm function working, the rest of the clock features work fine. We've got the dual time zone, the normal clock, as well as the slumber function, which is really a sleep countdown timer. You type in the number of minutes you want that to go off after, move the switch into the clock position, press slumber, and I've got a 1 minute countdown. So after a minute, the radio will go off. But if I want to cancel that, I can press the touch-sensitive button on the top. As you can see, these are two strips that are connected with your finger. That would be also how you switch the alarm off, if the alarm actually went off. But on the positive side, if I had to have one broken feature of this radio, it would be the alarm. I'd choose that one every time. But I'd also choose it to be broken this way round. By that I mean it doesn't go on. You can't turn the alarm on. Imagine it was broken the other way around, that you couldn't turn the alarm off, and it went off every morning at 2 AM. Yeah, I think I'll just stick with the problem that I've got, which is really not a problem. So all in, I've spent about £60 on this radio. It was £54 including delivery. Then I bought an aerial and a battery compartment and some batteries to go with it. And I've ended up with a radio that looks almost as good as new. It just needed a couple of simple repairs and a good clean. Let's take it outside and have a listen. Of course, while it's fascinating picking up broadcasts from all over the world, you can use this as a normal FM radio, and it's got a really good, rich quality of sound to it. Just have a listen to this.
Who wants to be today's winner? It could be you. Another £5,000 is on offer. We reopen the lines every day, so if you weren't lucky so far this month, you can play again today. For £5,000, the question is, which word is missing from this song?
Looks like I best finish this video here and ring that competition up. If I win it, I can buy myself a Sony CRF 330K. Unless, of course, you've got one lying around that you want to donate, preferably brand new in box. Please get in touch. I'll even do you a direct swap for my Philips radio. Guaranteed never to wake you up at some ungodly hour on a Sunday. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.